For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dmitry Shapiro. And now that you've seen me, I'm not that interesting. And so I'm going to switch to screen share and show you some visuals. And then again, thanks so much for joining us here. I really love doing these sessions because it allows me to just like geek out and hopefully show you guys some interesting things, connect with you. Again, please feel free and find me on LinkedIn and connect. I'm very approachable and do it. Okay. Um, and please also welcome folks that are joining late, as I expect a bunch of people will be joining as the hour goes by. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Typically, I'd see folks. Josh, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's do it. Okay. So, in my day job, I'm CEO of a venture-backed company called Mind Studio. Prior to this, I ran product at Google for 4 years. I was CTO at MySpace, if any of you remember that. And I built two other venture-backed companies. One was actually a large competitor to YouTube called Veo. One was an medium-sized cybersecurity company called Iconic Systems. Raised 70 million for this, 34 million for this. Here we've raised 36 million. So in Mind Studio, again, is a platform for building AI agents. There have been a bunch of agents deployed, although this is like a vanity metric. But there are thousands of agents running in production at big companies and small companies and kind of all kinds of places doing all kinds of automation. And the entire company are these people here. So that's the entire company. So there's a CTO and one engineer and some AI agents, of course, to be able to do this. And so what a crazy world we live in. What we're here to talk about today are these personal agents, specifically Hermes, which is the agent that I'm running in production. I started writing code in 1984 when I was in high school. And I'm more passionate about this technology that all of us have like access to now than I ever was. And so I geek out on all of this stuff. Kind of, this is my only hobby. It's not just my business, but also my hobby. And so I'm aware, and hopefully you guys are too, there's a tremendous amount of hype about these personal agents. OpenClaw was kind of the first one to come out. And again, oh, by the way, one other thing is I'm actually going to share this material here with you, and you guys can have it. Now, it'd be nice if you just look at my screen for now so you don't get distracted, but you've got access to all of this. Like you don't have to take notes and you can just look at this at your leisure whenever you're ready. Okay, I see none of you follow instructions. Everybody's in here. You're going to look around. That's all. That's good too. We get to see all these people moving around. Okay, by the way, there was this like social network called Moltbook that Facebook bought up. And then recently, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said that OpenClaw is the new computer. Okay, and so this stuff is important. Now, I like to refer to all of these things, by the way, together, OpenClaw and these various other claws are called just that. They're called claws. I like to refer to them as personal agents. Okay, and again, let's just quickly go through some so you guys are aware that what I'm showing you today actually transfers to all of these other agents as well. You can make all of these agents do what I'm doing with Hermes. Although, again, I've tried. I haven't tried Zero Claw. And obviously, I haven't tried countless others. But I've tried all these others. And at this moment, I think Hermes is by far the best. But all of that is bound to change, expected to change. So OpenClaw is kind of the original one. Again, this one, the one I'm running, is just better version of that. There's also claws that have been dramatically slimmed down. These things are kind of bloated. And so people want them to be slimmer and faster. This one's containerized, so it's got better security. This one's faster at startup, etc. But kind of the interesting thing about all of these, and again, I'm about to explain to you, the goal of this hour is not to give you a step-by-step instruction how to set up Hermes agent, even though this is here in this section over here. You can click on this link and it'll take you and open up this document that we'll go through in a bit. So I do give you step-by-step instructions. But the more valuable part of this, I believe, is this framing that I'm going to try to give you. Hey, guys, actually, can you do me a favor? I probably should have thought that there's a lot of people in the room. It's hard for me to read this if all of your little mouses are here, mice are here. So if you could like kind of move them and give me room, that would be awesome. Other people would be able to see what this is. Okay, so there's a lot of these personal agents. that are there. And again, the cool thing about it is you can actually build your own. What a crazy world we live in. I suspect all of you guys have heard of Claude Code, Codex, Anti-Gravity, etc. These coding agents. All you have to do is give any of these coding agents, for example, the link here to the Git repo for OpenClaw or Hermes, which is also open source, and say, hey, build me one of these. And so Claude Code can rebuild for you a completely custom, lightweight, made just for you personal agent, a harness. That's what we're about to start talking about. What are these things called? Harnesses, and how do they work? Okay, so this is my current Hermes ongoing repetitive tasks that it does. I'm not going to go through all of these now because it take up a bunch of time, but right here, I'm running Hermes desktop, and I've got access to various agents, and I can interact with my Hermes doing this. It also runs these 18, they're called cron jobs. Cron is a Unix command for sort of repetitive scheduled activity, and these agents support that. And so these are the cron jobs that are currently running. It tells you often they are run, what they do, and gives you a couple of sentences for it. We can get into those later in like question and answer if you guys want to talk about all of that. The core thing to understand in order to really be able to take advantage of all of these things, plus to kind of understand what's happening, in the world, like things are moving so quickly, what's hype and what's actually like really, really, compelling, valuable, transformative. Well, this is extraordinarily important here. So please pay attention to this. So what is a personal agent? What are these things? All of these things are pieces of software that somebody, developed and put out on the internet. And most of them are open source. And you can just download them from the internet. And these pieces of software are known as harnesses. Harness. A harness is an application that allows you to take a model, basically, and wrap it with other capabilities, with tools that the model can use in order to be able to get things done, right? Like you all know that you can chat with models and they can answer any kind of questions and generate all kinds of things, and wow, amazing. But they can't really do things, like, for example, like things on your computer or but other things that you can do, but because you've got hands, right? You got eyes and you got ears, these models, you can just chat with them. But when you take a model and you wrap it in a harness, when you connect it to a harness, in a sense, you give the model the ability to run your computer. That's what this harness does. When you download these applications here and install them, you give them access to your computer, and then you connect them to a model, and therefore you give the model access to your computer to be able to drive your computer. Well, what does that mean, drive your computer? Well, for example, it can read and write files on your computer, just like you can do. It can create files, and it can update files, and it can delete files, it can do all that. It can run these things called shell commands or bash commands or terminal commands. If you don't know what that is, some of you might be old enough to remember DOS back in the day. That's how we did it before we had Windows. Or some of you may have seen like hacker movies, and you realize that, hackers, they don't like move the mouse around. They just like type commands into a terminal. And that's what these AI models are now able to do. When you put them in a harness, they can drive your terminal, your command prompt, and then be able to, like the world's greatest hacker programmer, do things with your computer. So these models can use your computer better than you can use your computer. I don't care who you are. Better than anybody I've ever met can use their computer. These things can now use your computer when you give them a harness. They can write code. They can self-improve. They've got long-term memory. They deal with all kinds of other important things, like this thing called context compaction. We don't have time to get into it here, but I encourage you guys to kind of go out and do some research on like these harnesses. They're really, really important. And they are truly transformative. This is why Jensen Huang here said that OpenClaw is the new computer. That's what he means. In a sense, computers in the past, like we'd buy a piece of hardware, and then we would need to be able to, depending on how smart we are and capable and how quickly we typed and moved our mouse, that was how we used our computer. But now you can buy a computer and you can give it a harness and a model. In a sense, this is almost like self-driving. Like maybe that's the comparison, You can buy a regular car and then you have to drive it, or you can buy a Tesla. And it comes with self-driving. It comes with a model that can drive it. And, you know, the Teslas do all kinds of things that normal cars can't do. Okay. If you want to geek out on this, there's lots of content online. I've really been enjoying recently a bunch of stuff coming out of Y Combinator. Uh, you know, the team there is on fire. Mad respect. I also geek out. I teach a boot camp here with Dr. Marilee Nika. You guys feel free and check this out. The next cohort's coming out July 20th. And then again, so what does this mean? What's the point? Well, these things, once you install them on your computer, they can do anything you can do on your computer. So use the browser, email, calendar, Slack, any application you have. They can follow standard operating procedures. You can give them goals and targets, and they can intelligently optimize for them, and they can continue to get better. In fact, Hermes is sort of known for its ability to be able to get smarter the more you use it, because it does some fancy memory management. Although I'll show you that I've taken it to another level using Gary Tan's GBRAIN, which is crazy. I have no idea what that was. I have a Substack. I don't do a very good job of updating it, but 3 years ago, May 3rd of 2023, I wrote an article called The Human AI Interface, and in it I argued that we are already in a place, this was 3 years ago, where humans were the bottleneck. There was countless applications for us to go and download, install, and use, and we'd need to learn to use them and make time to become proficient at them and find hours in the day in order to be able to drive them. And so the problem was the human does not have the capacity to be able to take advantage of all of the amazing things that have been available to us for decades now. And then in the world of AI, that would just be exacerbated dramatically. And I argued that what we would need is to have some kind of a proxy that also is AI. At that time, they called it the U AI, or a personal digital agent. And that this thing, by being an AI, can scale to being able to understand all of these capabilities that it has access to and be a master of them and be able to drive them in a scalable way, you know, beyond, again, limitations of humans having a crash after lunch. And that our job was going to be to maintain a relationship with these things, right? Kind of like if you know any people that are extraordinarily powerful, wealthy, busy, they have chiefs of staff or they have family offices. And so, for example, recently I took my family to Disneyland. I had to go plan the trip to Disneyland. My wife helped me, but I had to go plan the trip to Disneyland. But people who are much more, you know, interesting and powerful than I can simply say to their, you know, family officer, chief of staff, say, I'd like to take the family to Disneyland, and they take care of all of that stuff. Now we all get something like that to be able to simply use. And all we have to do is install a harness, connect it to a model, and tell it what we want. By the way, that's the hard part. You see, whenever we have new technology, it's hard for us to be able to shift our mindset in order to figure out how to truly unlock the power of this technology. And we tend to use it in old-fashioned ways. And so we're kind of here, I think, as a society, in being able to leverage these things. Okay. Installing this Hermes agent or any claw is kind of always the same thing. As I mentioned, I think all of these actually have Git repos. They're all open source, and you can just go find them on GitHub. You can just search for Hermes agent or OpenClaw or NemoClaw or any of these things. And then you need to copy this command here. It's called a curl command, or it's a terminal command. The command is curl, which basically downloads and installs this application. Also, Hermes made it easy that you can just go to this website and then, you know, you can just download it from the website. You don't have to go find it on GitHub. They also have a desktop app that I am running right here, which is awesome. And I think this is the right way to run Hermes, is as this desktop app. So I encourage you to install it. By the way, I'm presenting to you on one computer, but that's actually not Watson. Watson is running over there on another computer, right? That's always on. And that's just an old MacBook Pro that it's running on, okay? And so when you go here and you run this curl command, it'll download and install everything. I encourage you not to do it here. You'll get distracted, and I think you'll miss out on the framing. So if I could propose you guys wait to do this, it'll probably take you anywhere from like 15 to 30 minutes to kind of futz around and install a bunch of these things, and then, hours for configuration and other things. And so you should give it time. Don't try to do it now. So I want to explain to you how it works here. And again, I'll give you step-by-step instructions here we'll get to. So you download it, it installs it. You will then need to connect it to a model. There's two primary ways to connect these things to models. One is using your subscription that you might have on OpenAI or Anthropic, for example, and you can create an OAuth connection, it's called, to the provider and use that. And so there you get to use your monthly quota and face, rate limiting and things like that, depending on what plan you're on in these things. But the costs here are significantly less than the costs of using the API. The API is a lot more flexible. You can use it as much as you want, as long as you can deposit money and pay for it. But these API tokens are highly discounted in the subscription thing. So I encourage you guys to use your subscription. In doing that, again, I explain to you how to do all of that here later. And then once this thing is installed, then you can just chat with it. Like that's what these things are, right? It's got a chat interface. And then you can explain to it who you are and what you do and what you care about. And you can explain to it how you want it to behave. We'll get into all of that here in a bit. Okay, so very quickly, again, if you click on this, you will open up this doc. I see a bunch of you people are in it. Awesome. And again, I kind of give you some screenshots step by step here. And then once you see the screen, you'll realize that, you're up and running. Hooray. Okay, then the next thing you need to do is you need to configure a search API. So these agents, obviously the models have training that they've gone through and have access to all kinds of amazing knowledge. But these agents are constantly needing to extend that knowledge, to fact check it, to look at it in different ways. And so they do a tremendous amount of searching. Searching what? Searching Google, searching the web, searching all of these sources. And even though they actually can drive a browser, and so they can open up a browser on your computer and, go to google.com and focus on the input field and type things and hit enter. That's dumb. That's a very slow way of searching. That was made for humans, not for agents. And so there are these things called search API providers. There's a whole bunch of them that are built into Hermes that ask you, do you want this, or this? I haven't tried all of them, but I've tried the vast majority of them. I love u.com. I propose this is the one you use. It also gives you $200 worth of credits, which is awesome. It's dumb easy to install it. You just go there and get the API and say, use this. And then again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I give you a bunch of kind of nerdy deep dives on why this thing is the one that I'm choosing versus others. Also, if you're doing anything with financial data, like this thing is a must. No other search API comes even close to any of this on this. If you're building applications for finance, this is the way to go. And then also, I am running this thing called GBRAIN. So Gary Tan, the CEO of Y Combinator, in the last couple of years, just like the rest of us nerds who, were professional developers and then became, executives and got rusty in writing code, but still love code. And now we find ourselves in this world where we got these coding agents that we can drive to write code faster than we could have ever written code before, even when we were doing it full time. And so Gary's gone crazy in creating all kinds of amazing things. I also, in my boot camp, teach another thing called GStack, which is a thing that Gary built that makes coding with Claude Code dramatically better. But here for my personal agent, I'm running this GBRAIN stack. Again, I explained to you here what it does. It's basically a long-term memory system that allows you to kind of ingest all of this email and Slack and Notion and Twitter and like all of the places that there's information that you care about. It ingests it, it maps it all out in a graph, it vectorizes all of it, and so you can do all kinds of semantic searches for it, and it's got a bunch of really, really smart things in it. It's dumb easy to install. Once your agent is installed, you just say this. Copy and paste this into your agent. It will install it. You'll need to also get an API key for OpenAI because it uses an OpenAI endpoint for doing these vector embeddings. Again, if you don't know what any of this is, don't worry about it. It's easy enough to just go through and do it on your own. Again, if you really can't do it, come to a boot camp and you can do it there. We do it. Okay. And so again, this opens up all kinds of amazing use cases. This ability to have vectorized long-term memory that can, now you can ask all kinds of crazy questions you couldn't ask before of your data. And not only can you do it, your agent can do that proactively. The fact that it's got access to the search API means it can do an unlimited amount of research and all kinds of amazing other things to do lots of enrichment, which is really important here. You'll see in a second. And so together, one of the fundamental things that this is helping me do is to create something I've always wanted, which is smart contacts or smart entities, right? And so every day, my GBRAIN here ingests my email calendar, Zoom, which is my primary like video conferencing thing, Twitter, LinkedIn contacts, and then goes off and uses u.com, then does a bunch of searches to enrich all of these contacts that I'm having meetings with, for example. And then all of that data is then stored and made available for me in this database, right? And so this is something called Obsidian. This is, again, another third-party application that I link to somewhere here for you guys. You can always look up Obsidian. There it is, Obsidian. All right, so if you click here, you can go download this free application, and this is what GBRAIN uses in order to be able to just store all of these files and create a graph. And we can also, sorry, wrong thing. We can also look at our graph and sort of zoom in to different people in the graph and who they're connected to and how I'm connected to them. Whoop, different projects. Sorry, I'm running this on a remote computer here, and now I've lost my way. Let's see if maybe I can recover it. Okay, that's not important. You guys saw that graph for a moment. I apologize, but this is really cool, the ability to visualize all of this and to have it there. That's kind of the back end of this. Okay, yeah, so again, these smart contacts and entities is extraordinarily important because all of this information that we used to have to manually enter into like CRM systems, and it would get, it would decay and it would get old, and now this thing can just stay fresh. And so I know of the people that I care about and entities that I care about. This thing is constantly keeping them up to date in my smart contacts. I know what's going on with them when they switch positions, when they move to other companies. Excuse me. I understand what they're talking about on social media, what they care about. It really, really insane, the knowledge you can have, in a sense, about the world around you with these enriched things. Okay, and again, all of this kind of barely scratches the surface of what you can do here. There's also something that's really important to configure early on, is some gates for cost control. These things can get quite expensive when you, again, install this agent and you say, oh, I'm just going to give it a bunch of things. I want you to do this and that and this and that. And it says, okay, I got you, boss. And it starts doing it. And then all of a sudden you like look at your Anthropic bill and it's like hundreds of dollars a day that you're spending on inference. Why? The biggest culprit of this is choosing either the wrong model or choosing just one model in order to be able to get everything done. And so one of the things that I have implemented and encourage you to implement is this kind of what I'm calling activity-dependent model selection. Maybe I can make this larger for you guys. I apologize if it's been small. And so all of these model providers have these multiple tiers of models, and they are different sort of quality and also different price. And so it's really important to watch out that you don't say, well, use Opus for everything, because then you're going to get a ginormous bill. And in fact, you don't need Opus for everything. Opus is actually overkill for the vast majority of things you would do with a personal agent. And so this is what I suggest you guys do, which is just copy this. It says implement activity-dependent model selection. And again, you can replace these. If you're using OpenAI, you can use their models, Google, etc. And so in this case, I'm running Anthropic. So my agent uses Sonnet as the default model. That's the sort of medium one. And so it does that for everything. When it needs to write code, not just a tiny little code snippet, but like build anything. And it does build periodically its own tools and refactor stuff and does all of that. it instantly switches before it does anything to Opus because Opus is just a significantly better coder. And then when it's done, it switches back to Sonnet. And then when it's doing things like going out and parsing things and like small summarization, all kinds of things like that, that don't need so much reasoning, but more sort of like NLP, then it uses the super cheap model Haiku. And with all of that, there are dramatic savings as compared to just using one model, again, Opus. Um, and I've also created a bunch of processes here that I'll lead you through in a bit, which specifically look for that, because periodically these things can sort of stray, right? Like you've all heard kind of this term you may have not known before, non-deterministic, means not necessarily the same thing over and over and over again. You can't determine what the thing is going to be because that's how AI models work. And so even though it was working now, it might later break somehow. And if you're not paying attention to it, well, then you're going to get a big bill and you might not like that. Well, mine is, every day a cron job runs, actually multiple ones focused on cost, specifically looking for inefficiencies, runaway processes, anywhere where there are cost things, because, I don't want to pay for things I'm not using. I currently have 18 of these cron jobs running. They are, these are sort of some of them. This one I was just telling you about, this daily inefficiency scan that actually looks at all, this happens at night while I'm sleeping. It looks at our entire setup because it's changing every day. We're constantly expanding the capabilities, changing. And then it's looking for sort of self-analyzing. Do I have any kind of poor architecture in what I've built before? Do I have any other efficiencies that I could find? And then when it finds them, it gives me a heads up and then asks me if I wanted to fix it. And I say yes, all the time. And again, it can also show me itemized spend of all of this. So it knows about all the tokens it's spending, and you can ask it to give you an itemized list and a ranked list and like all of that stuff. Also, mine is doing a lot of signal monitoring, as I'm calling it, things like social listening. What's happening in the world? What's happening in the world on news and the web? Obviously all these social media services. We live in the attention economy. You can be making the most amazing products, doing the most amazing things. If you can't bring it to people, if you can't get their attention and get them to focus on it, you lose. And so this is incredibly important, being able to play the social media game at scale and not spend all your time on Twitter, for example, right? Because then you can't get anything done. Then there is daily processes that run that, again, look at all of these other services that I'm using and suck all that data up into GBRAIN in order to be able to understand it and map it and allow me to query it and allow it to be used as context in future things. Really, really powerful. Again, unfortunately, we don't have time to like really dive into all of these because I could spend hours on any one of these things. But I'll be hosting more of these kinds of seminars as well, so make sure you keep an eye on them. This stuff is very, very powerful. And then every night, GBRAIN runs a process called dreaming, where again, it kind of does the same thing as this inefficiency scan, but not the same thing, but a similar thing of like looking at all of the data and then refactoring it and enriching it and kind of making sure that everything is nice and tidy for our agent to be able to use or for us to be able to query and do stuff. There's also on the Hermes website a bunch of these use cases. Now, I'm not proposing that these are the right ones. Some are the ones I'm doing, others I've kind of looked at, but I just want you to know that this is here. It might give you some ideas of things you might be interested in doing with your personal agent. Okay. And then, Marilee and I have this free community. You guys are free to join it. And again, if you ever want to come to a boot camp, you're free to do that as well. So that's this document. It's linked here, and you can always have access to it. Okay, so let's continue. So once we've installed, again, any claw, I don't care what claw you're installing. You can install OpenClaw, perfectly fine. But once you've installed one of these personal agents and configured it, and again, whether you chose to use GBRAIN or, not, it doesn't really matter. Again, I'm not like, I'm not selling here to you. I'm not sponsored by any of these things. I'm just showing you my tech stack. But once you're kind of done in some base configuration of what you want, then kind of comes the like really more interesting and in many ways more difficult part of it, which is, okay, but what is it beyond like making sure that costs don't run, out of control, or that you know what's going on in social media, or that you're tracking all of your contacts and your meetings, and like you've got this like crazy, modern self-building CRM that, unlike anything that you could do anywhere else, because everything's been put in a graph and everything is semantically queryable, just like awesome. But so what? Okay. These things can do dramatically more. Remember, they can use your computer better than you've ever been able to dream of using your computer, like at insane scale. And you can run a bunch of these in parallel and doing it. Okay, and these are the kinds of dimensions that start to be like really important, right? And I'm kind of calling customizing your agent. The first, and think of these again as kind of like dimensions, and they're not prescriptive here. Either one of these works. In fact, I encourage all of you guys to just experiment with all these technologies. I've installed and uninstalled OpenClaw maybe close to 24 times, probably another half dozen times for Hermes and these other agents, and put them in these different configurations and played around with them and saw how they behaved and saw where the pros and cons were of them. And I propose to you that like getting your sea legs on that, really being comfortable with these new technologies will give you a dramatic unfair advantage. Because first of all, everything is constantly changing at like an absurd rate. There's like no way, even if that's all you do all day long, that you can keep up. Now, your agent can help you a lot, again, by watching the world and saying, don't pay any attention to it. I'll be the filter for you. And now I'm going to provide for you a custom feed of things that actually matter. And I've already muted out all the garbage out of it. So that's really powerful. Again, mine does that. But even with that, you still can't keep track of everything. So I think having these like fundamental understanding of this technology at these levels is extraordinarily important. Okay. And so the first one is when you're customizing your agent, is it going to be you? Is it the digital you? Or is it a digital someone else, a digital assistant? Okay. And so one way this matters, of course, is what credentials do you give these things? When you install Hermes, not only do you need to give it a model, but if you want it to have email, well, you need to give it an email account. Now, you could create a new Gmail account for it and say you're an assistant, it's a new Gmail. Or you could log yourself in and let it use your credentials. And for all the other services you might use. And this is a really important decision here to make. And again, which one is better? It depends. It depends on your use cases. And again, that's why I'm encouraging you guys to play around with this. So if it's you, again, this is kind of the more advanced one, which is what people do. I'm running this current implementation of Hermes as me. The only sign that it's not me is that when Hermes posts on LinkedIn, for example, or on Twitter, and it's not me, Hermes puts a little fox icon. That's its little icon. When you see a little fox icon, that means that wasn't me that did that. That was my agent. His name is Watson. That was Watson doing it. Okay. But mostly when people are starting out, they're like, oh, I kind of don't trust this thing. I don't know if it's going to do terrible things, and so I'm going to configure it as an assistant. Try both. If you configure it as an assistant, you got to really figure out like its roles and responsibilities, what's the delineation, and all of that, but very powerful. Another dimension that's really important is kind of what I'm calling indoctrination versus acculturation. Right. And so like when you indoctrinate someone into something, you kind of brainwash them, not necessarily in a negative way, but like you make them think like you, and they are, you give them a very sort of prescriptive point of view and guardrails and things of that sort. So that's indoctrination. When you acculturate someone, say to a community of people, well, they learn the customs and norms, and then they become a member of that community, and they have free will, and they are much less indoctrinated into sort of like one rigid way of being and thinking. And so again, which one is better? It depends. If you want a Hermes agent that is not giving you a bunch of advice and doing stuff, and you just want it to do the work because you don't want to do the work, and you just want it to do the work, well, you should think about configuring it like this. If you want it to be much more sort of proactive and go out and do things on its own and come back to you and again, sort of with surprises of like, oh, I thought that this might be valuable to do. Actually did a bunch of research on it and it turns out it is. Here's a plan. Do you want me to execute it? Well, wow, that's crazy. And that's acculturation. Okay. And then I also, this is probably like 2 weeks old, but kind of similar. You can obviously ask the models, like, what are some use cases for this? Along with this other use case document that I gave you in that other document. And these are sort of common ones that people use, which is, hey, we're constantly using many systems in order to communicate with one another. It's unruly. And so you can have your agent put it all together, give you a morning brief, afternoon brief, create a dashboard for you that like helps you very quickly see things across all of these different applications where we need to engage one another today. So consolidation, this is really, really valuable. Another thing that's really valuable is, again, even if you've never written a line of code, we live in a completely different world now, and you should be building your own applications to do all kinds of things. If you don't know how to do it, look it up. It's easy, okay? Or come to a boot camp. You can learn it on your own. But if you need to do it, you can come to a boot camp, but it's learnable. And once you feel the power of like being able to say, oh, I have an idea, I want to build an application and build it. Well, wow. Now people have gotten beyond that and they've realized that not only is it valuable to build these applications, but sometimes you're away from your computer. You're having lunch. Well, that shouldn't stop you from building applications. And so you can build applications from your phone by asking your agent to build applications when you come back from lunch. That problem you were going to solve after lunch is actually already solved. Crazy world we're living in. Or building these things called second brains, right? Again, this is like a 2 decades old concept where people have figured out that you can use information technology to create sort of like a reference material of things you've encountered before, like you're kind of saving it. And then if it's well organized, you can recall it and do all of that. This is completely irrelevant now with things like GBRAIN. GBRAIN's like this on like gigasteroids. And so I'm not doing anything here specifically for that, but this is a common use case. And then again, a bunch of other things. These again, there's a tremendous amount of information in our world. And there's a tremendous amount of really valuable signal in that information, but it's sort of abstracted by noise. But if you can invest either your mental power, or in this case, your agent, plus a search API, and say, go deep into the subject matter and find the needle in the haystack, or find the important ideas that I wouldn't have seen, like spend time trying to understand all of this, you get countless use cases. I've seen day traders that are monitoring, Google Trends. That's a ranking of keywords and their performance over time, how much people search for things. And they've created agents that are monitoring these different, clusters of search terms on Google Trends to see how they're changing. Tesla's supply chain, Elon gone crazy, whatever. All of these things together then can give you a signal about public opinion, sentiment, and then allow you, in this case, to trade, on technical information better. And so there's countless use cases for this stuff. Okay. And then finally, I also want to touch upon a little bit before I take questions on some of the things that we're doing here that are outside of just sort of personal, but more kind of like business agency things. So this is a graph from this thing called Ahrefs. It's a service used by like SEO optimizer people and other folks, analytics, basically website analytics. And this is the organic traffic to Mind Studio. These numbers down here are in the 3,000 to 4,000 range. And then you can see, and this is by month, as they've gone up, and now they're sitting here at 140K plus range. What happened? Well, we used an agent to build our blog. And so we have a blog that is running. Here it is. It's 3 months old. You can see it's got lots of articles. June 8th, June 8th, June 8th, June 8th. It publishes anywhere from 20 to 60 articles per day, every day. These articles are long reads about all kinds of important things. They also have a bunch of ads here for our new product called Remy. And as you can see, these ads are different. There's actually hundreds of these ads that are running across this network. There's another ad. And this is what's bringing in all of this traffic. It's that blog, because these articles get cited by AI models. And also, this stuff is extraordinarily well SEO optimized. And so our agent writes awesome content. How does it work? This is the general pattern. It's got three systems. The insight we had with it is that what's the best way to create a blog about what's going on in AI? Well, you need to figure out what's going on in AI. Well, that's really hard. There's a lot of stuff going on in AI. And so our idea was like, well, what if we watch what a bunch of YouTubers that are focused on AI news, what are they talking about? And we watch them as a cluster, not one, in this case, 11 channels, YouTube channels that we handpicked. And every day, this agent connects to YouTube, looks at all of these 11 channels, gets all the videos in the last 24 hours, looks at their transcripts, and evaluates them as a set, and then creates a ranked list of the topics that they're covering. Again, these YouTubers are in the business of knowing what people are searching for and what they want to know about, and we're just simply using that as a proxy in order to be able to get the signal. Then, for each of those topics, our agent goes off and does deep research. Again, I told you search is an extremely important part of all of this. And so this is another example of it. So it does a tremendous amount of searching to go out and find information about these topics, creates various different story angles about even the same topic about these topics, and then automatically writes these 20 to 60 per day SEO optimized posts. Okay. And then finally, there's another subsystem, basically same agent, but a sub-agent that creates all of these ads. As I mentioned, there's actually hundreds of ads that are being created in the blog and are running, and you will encounter them. There's another one. There's another one. You know, these are all. There's another one. By the way, not a single developer not a single developer and not a single designer have been involved in creating this agent. This agent was created by one of our non-technical people on our team, and he created the entire thing that does all of this. Okay, pretty crazy world we're living in. Also, and you may have seen it here in my thing, investor seed raise. And so we're actually spinning out this Remy product as a new company and raising a seed for it. I've now raised just over $140 million for 3 companies that I've built. So I actually have a large investor network and all of that. But I thought, hey, let me see if I could use Hermes here. Like if I didn't and I wanted to scale investor outreach and intelligence about what investors, who, how, what partner, what's the angle to approach them, all of these things. And that's what this thing is showing here. This giant spreadsheet that it created for me that's got like 1,200 something investors with all their email addresses. This is the source of truth that it's using as a tracker. It's, you know, it enriches all of these things with all kinds of information about them. Again, using this deep research search, it creates, you know, thesis match comparisons, takes into account their investments, gives me a proposed hook of how to reach out to them, and all of that. The amount of work that this would have taken to do manually, I couldn't have possibly done, but this sort of thing did it on its own. And then there's a really crazy multidimensional Twitter thing that I've set up to be able to go and really engage on Twitter at scale. Again, these are really for experimentation purposes. I don't run them at high scale, but you could. And that's really, really amazing. And so, whoops, sorry. This is the thing. So this pipeline compiles this list. I showed you 1,200 investors. It does deep research, enriches all of them. It understands what they've invested in, what they're looking for, what they're talking about on Twitter and LinkedIn and the news, etc. So it knows them. And then it can craft custom cold emails or custom, replies to them on Twitter or anything else. It can send these messages out or just queue them up. I never have this thing send out emails for me. Again, just personal choice, but it can. But it can draft emails and then I can send them, right? And then it monitors my inbox for responses. And when responses comes, it can notify me. If responses don't come, it can create another, a set of outreach to folks from a different angle with a different storyline. So this, like, if you're in sales, obviously, or marketing, the ability to like create these pipelines that do really, a lot of busy work, a tremendous amount of work. Well, you can scale that now and do it. Okay, one final thing I want to show you before I take questions. Again, this is for later. I'm not going to go through this, but I wanted to give you kind of this, what I'm calling the extreme acculturation example. And so all of these agents, again, when you install your agent, it doesn't know anything about you. It doesn't know anything about itself. It's got access to a model. The model knows anything about anything, and it's got access to a search API, so it can look anything up, okay, and do research on anything. But kind of doesn't know anything else about you. And especially if you're trying to get it to become where you're not just telling it prescriptively, do this, 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 and this, and nothing else. But if you want it to become your assistant, your peer, your chief of staff that's proactive, well, you have to give it a bunch of context. And there's a bunch of different ways people do that. One way they do it is to use something called Grill Me. If you look up like Grill Me, Hermes, or etc., there's like a bunch of like Git repos and other things where people have figured out that you can get the models to ask you a bunch of questions about whatever sort of exhaustively. And so you can get into this interview where your agent interviews you and it creates these MD files. These are called markdown files. They're just basically text with some additional characters in it for formatting and structure. And then this is a set of these MD files for a level 5 senior product manager on the infrastructure team at Meta, internal infrastructure at Meta. This is an anonymized version. All the names have been changed. And again, you can go through this and you can start to realize, like I suggest you guys read these things. It's not about implementing this, but you start to realize, wow, yes, if this was the context that my agent had about me, my company, my role in the company, its role in the company, our culture, our procedures, what it can do on its own, what it needs to only let me do, what it needs to escalate, who are other important peers I might have as a product manager, a tech lead, or product marketing lead, like all these other folks. And this thing sort of enumerates this ad nauseum, okay? And so then again, these agents are really good at being able to kind of take all of this and sort of compress it, because if you just injected all of this into the context, your agent wouldn't work. But this is the source of truth, and then it can then be digested, and these things can run better. Okay, folks, so we've just barely scratched the surface of it. And obviously, I could spend many hours just in here showing you all these crazy things that Watson can do. But instead, maybe I will have Josh give me a bunch of questions that hopefully he's synthesized from you guys, and we can start there. Yeah. And again, all of you can reach me later on LinkedIn. Please join the Skool community. So if you have questions and we don't get to them here, by top of the hour, don't worry about it. You can ask them later. We're not going to leave you high and dry. Yeah. Okay. Josh, any questions?
Yeah, sure thing. Great session, Dimitri. So just to reiterate, because this has been coming up in the chat, I will share you the link to what Dimitri was sharing, the board, as well as the recording will be shared within 24 hours after this call. But without further ado, some questions. So starting with some basic ones, people were asking about security, as well as do they need to put it in a separate, device or host it on a separate device?
Yeah. So this is a great and important question. Whenever you download a piece of software from the internet, especially one that's specifically made for you to give it control of your computer and connect it to some AI model, and then have it do whatever it is chooses to do, well, that sounds scary, and that seems like it's nuts. And so when these things first came out, the obvious thing to do was to go and take some old computer like I have, or a bunch of people started buying Mac Minis. And Apple ran out of Mac Minis actually because of OpenClaw and other claws. Um, and then putting it on a separate machine. Um, I think this is a good idea. I think if you're just getting started with this, if you've got a separate machine to put it on, I think that's the best idea. It doesn't have to be a powerful machine. It just needs to be able to have some storage space and can connect to a network. So you can use like very old machines. And in fact, again, some of these claws, Nano Claw and Zero Claw, are super efficient. You can run them on like Raspberry Pis. And so get some machine installed, or you can run them on virtual private servers like Hostinger and other things like that. So run it on another machine. Um, but again, I think with what I'm seeing now, because everything's moving so rapidly, I'm not scared to install Hermes on my primary machine and give it access to things. I might not give it access to everything, but certainly some things. Watson does have my credentials. It has access to my email and my calendar and my Slack, all the transcripts for all my meetings. And well, again, all of that is going into GBRAIN, and all of that is getting enriched. And then I benefit from it. And if it didn't have access to all of that, well, then I wouldn't be able to benefit from it. And so fortune favors the bold, is that the saying? And so I encourage you guys to get comfortable and then later get bold.
Great. And another question that came in was about whether you can use more than one Hermes instances, so you can have multiple, like kind of almost like a multi-agent orchestration type of thing.
You absolutely can. In fact, there's a number of ways to do it, to architect it. You can have one Hermes agent that's acting as a bunch of separate agents. You can have multiple Hermes agents running. You can have a bunch of Mac Minis or a bunch of computers or a bunch of VPS instances that are running individual agents or teams. We're really getting into a bit of a crazy land now. Some of you may have seen Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code, and Andrei Karpathy, like all of these like super AI geeks talking about that like humans shouldn't be prompting Claude Code to build applications for them. Humans should be creating loops that are prompting Claude Code to create applications. Everything's going more and more meta in being able to do, which makes sense because then you can scale all of this.
Great. And then more generally, people have been asking, what are the pros and cons between OpenClaw and Hermes? And I think I touched on it a little bit here and there, but yeah, a
Yeah.
great showing.
I will give you just my opinion on it, although, again, I kind of geek out on it, so that opinion seems to be shared by others. But I encourage you to do your own research. OpenClaw, and again, Peter Steinberger, who built it, got acquired by OpenAI. It's now an OpenAI product. It wasn't the first personal agent, but it was the first one that got big. It's got a huge community of people that showed up and started using it and building other things for it, like companion websites, like Claw Hub, for example. Or like skills websites and all of that. And so it's got a lot of hype and a lot of community. But it tends to be, again, I've installed it probably close to 2 dozen times now. 60 to 70% of the time that I install it, everything goes well. The other, 30 to 40%, it's a disaster and you got to spend a bunch of time configuring it. It seems to be just more janky and more bloated. And I've actually been really impressed with Hermes in not being that. And so at this moment, if you want an off-the-shelf agent, the one I can recommend is Hermes. But also, again, I encourage you guys to play around with this. Go install Claude Code or Codex or Anti-Gravity, whatever, and say to it, build me a personal agent. Here's a repo link to Hermes or OpenClaw. Make me one that's less bloated or with these other things that I want. And then you get to be product manager and you can have a completely custom personal agent and it's nooks and crannies because your agent built it and all of that. Yeah.
Great. And I think we are running out of time, so this might be the last question. More for you, Dimitri, as you've set up Hermes for yourself, how have you decided or prioritize what to build first? Is it based on outcomes or friction points? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of this has been, again, just a tremendous amount of geeking out and trial and error. And that's why I was kind of prescriptive for you guys of like the things you should do first, right? Install Search API, install GBRAIN, create some of these cron jobs that are monitoring for efficiency and monitoring that you haven't had model float, your model hasn't switched, uh, monitoring for security vulnerabilities. So you can have cron that runs every night, for example, that does a security audit and patches things and updates things. And so like these like housekeeping things, I think are the most important things to get done. And then you can spend an eternity geeking out of like, oh, I want to add this feature and that feature. Well, warning for you guys, this stuff can really suck you in from like a time sink. Okay, my wife can tell you about that. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm upgrading my agent." Like, honey, this is work. This is making me more productive. I know I can't go and do these honeydews, but that's what I'm doing. She's like, "Well, how long are you going to do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea." So be careful. Don't get divorced. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, listen, thanks so much for letting me geek out with you here. I had a lot of fun. Find me online, come to more of these things, go try this stuff. Don't sit it out. This is the new computer. This is the new digital literacy. Do that. Do that. There is nothing I can give you as like advice other than like go find love and have a bunch of kids and things like that. I have 5 kids. That's important too. This might even help you do that. But like go do that now. This isn't hype. This stuff here, that stuff is real. That's the future, now future of computing. See you guys. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Dimitri. And we will be sending out the recording as well as the all the links that Dimitri showed today. So yeah, thanks for joining everyone. Bye.
Thanks, folks. Be well. Take care.